This is an open letter to journalists or those people who want to be journalists, who are journalists, who think they are the journalists. Because we have all kinds. I mean, you have pretty girls that, read off a script, consider themselves as journalists. I mean, what is democracy without journalism? Without journalists poking their head where they're not wanted. But the problem is when these journalists try to poke their head in, Chinese business. It's very good, very good, very good. But then journalists try to poke their head in, the pinkskins business, and suddenly, Julian Assange and Edward Snowden and that poor trigender guy in these all suffered, and many more that we don't know of suffered because they tried to do what journalism used to be, collect information that people don't want you to collect and dispose of it for the masses, so the deficiencies can be pinpointed. So, this is how there are shortcomings. Journalists' job is to show the shortcomings. And the shortcomings of not, the system. So journalists, of course, need to be at the front line of any war. But I guess after Vietnam, my military friends, after Vietnam, they got the idea in Vietnam that military and journalists cannot be friends. We cannot take journalists to the front line. Journalists see what we have, what we are doing, and they draw a very paranoid, aggressive picture of us. Well, this is how the military looks at the journalists. And the military is used to doing things a certain way, in a very, aggressive, determined way, even if it means eliminating the other side. So that's what military is. And journalism is to look at the matter objectively. And that's what the military men don't want. They had a bad experience. They thought they're showing how macho they are to the journalists in the front line. They thought that is giving off a good vibe, because they just think them differently. Soldiers and journalists supposed to think very differently. But what the journalists took away was that cowboys are free in Southeast Asia, roaming free in Southeast Asia, and that's the whole idea of Apocalypse Now. Was the whole idea that cowboys have left the West and they are loose in Southeast Asia. And the whole idea of Vietnam and Korea and a couple more of them which were not officially involved, but unofficially they were involved. What's the result? What happened? What's the result? And who put a stop to it? Well, eventually public opinion turned because journalists were doing journalism. Now they take them to Kuwait, they put them in air-conditioned rooms, and they give them the bulletins and give them the detailed story, and then wine and dine the journalist. And until so the journalists can send these stories back home. It's basically an update, a memo. Basically considering saying that we are worried for your safety, so we are not going to take you to the front line, like we did in Vietnam. When the journalist is not there, nothing is reported. And the thing with Snowden is that, oh no, it wasn't Snowden, it was Julian Assange, that the main beef that they had with him was a very short clip. Supposedly that's their main beef, that it was a short clip of showing that, you know, drones attacking journalists, you know, Arab journalists, you know, the kind of journalists who didn't listen and didn't stay in the Kuwaiti press arena with spas and masseurs, you know, ready for service. That arena that the military had put together for the journalists to, you know, take care of them with champagne and caviar. These fucking Arab journalists somehow found their way to the front line of, you know, war, and they were taking taking news and sending news back home to their own news networks or websites or whatever, and suddenly, you know, the drone hit them from distance. Just, you know, like a group of 6, 7, 8 of them around the car were moving towards, and it was, you know, later on it came out that exactly they know people knew their names, came out that they were all journalists. They were nothing more than journalists. Oh, mistake? Yeah, it could be considered a mistake, but the thing is, my pink-skinned journalist friends, apparently your life is very important, huh? So picking a job as a journalist, and since your life is considered important and my life is not, so your life, you should maybe try to really report on the front lines and put your life in danger, so the pink skins go easy on the situation. I mean, if you're on the line, if you're reporting, maybe they hold back. Maybe they hold back. Maybe they don't shoot the guy in the back. If the journalists are doing their job, a lot less things can go badly wrong. You know, a lot less things, a lot more accountability will come out of it when you have more journalists in the front line. Front lines of everything, front lines of this abortion. I mean, there should be, you know, journalists every day interviewing people who benefited from abortion in the United States. There should be journalists, you know, interviewing people every day. Interview 50 people, put it up on the internet, and, you know, these are the people who benefited from this abortion. Without that abortion, you know, their lives would have been something else, all entirely. Now they have, you know, achieved a status in the society because they weren't, you know, tied down to take care of a kid, which the state doesn't want to help out in its care. I mean, even the rich folks, or some of the rich folks, are up in arms that they're worried that the minions need childcare. Imagine that. The rich industrialists, some of them have risen up or had enough, and they're taking. Imagine that. Some of the rich are taking the side of the people, and the government is not. Some of the rich are saying that, you know, we can't squeeze, you know, blood out of the turnip. They have been squeezed too much. Let's, you know, let them breathe. But the system doesn't get the message. And the journalists are not saying that. I mean, the rich are coming out and saying that, but the journalists are not, because if they, you know, lose their status, lose their job, they will lose their socio-economic position. that they feel so uppity about. So we will never actually say why there's so many poor people. We'll never actually say that. It's sort of, oh, they're poor, it's their own fault. I'm sorry, it's not their own fault, it's your educational system. Whatever country you're in, if you're in Nigeria, the Nigerian poor people is not their own fault. Nigerian people is the fault of if they're very poor, it's the fault of state. I don't know if they are. What I'm saying is, for Chad, Morocco, if there is no direction for the younger generations, if there is what they have been taught is not what is expected of them in the adulthood, what they have been taught as youngsters is not useful to them in adulthood, then it's the state's fault. It's not the kid's fault. The kid they've told him, hey, you got to go to this school and you got to read this shit. And then the kid goes to school and reads that shit and gets a C on it and passes and graduates. It's the state's job to direct these folks towards, to learn as they are kids, to learn subjects that are useful to society. Of course there is state control needs to be involved. I'm not sure with this individualism and freedom of will and kids don't know exactly what will be needed for tomorrow, but a competent state has people who can predict what is going to be needed and tell the state what is going to be needed for the future in terms of labor market, and then go ahead and set up policies to create that environment that certain skills are promoted. And the system realizes that not all people can pick up those certain skills, and if there is less job this year than there was last year just because of automation and AI, then the systems comes up to the conclusion that, okay, if the journalist tells the system, as long as the journalists are they call them journalists, they're no longer journalists. There is nobody in Cambodia right now giving on the rice field report. Nobody is in Iraq giving in the fucking mosque report. Nobody. It's not unheard of. It's sort of like, oh, we see it, we see their news, we analyze it from here, and that's about it. We give you our opinion about it. How many people do you have on the ground over there? None. Zero. Oh, this is very dangerous. Why is it very dangerous? Are you pissing on the locals that this makes it dangerous for you? Why is it making dangerous? Is it because you're putting so much pressure on the other side that the other side is, having a lockdown every other day? Why is it dangerous? Maybe if you release the pressure on the other side, like North Korea, maybe they wouldn't have to have a lockdown every other day. I mean, people leave you alone if you leave them alone. People will leave you alone if you leave them alone. But why stack so much military weapons on the border? How dangerous do you think the other side is? This is what I'm saying, is that both sides are demonizing each other. It's sort of like, I gotta stack my weapons right next to the border to show the motherfucker what he has to deal with. I gotta have a military parade every year to remind the motherfuckers what they have to deal with if they fuck with us. Well, why is it that they feel like that? Why they feel under threat? Is it because, North Korean ships were confiscated, Iranian ships were confiscated? That freedom of navigation thing works how? There is no, you don't accept the International Criminal Court. You don't accept its jurisdiction anywhere. This is, I'm talking at this point, to most of the NATO countries, all the NATO countries, the pink skin countries. In the pink skin countries, in the pink skin landia, it's basically sort of like our courts are your courts. But our military is our military. So if our courts pass a judgment, our military is going to enforce it on you on the other side of the fucking planet. The other side's courts may have a totally opposing view. That's why the whole idea of an international criminal court for, to get a fair view, not a biased view in which the judge is biased toward his own tribe. Every judge has a bias toward his own tribe. A lot of these, a lot of these international convictions are, political moves. We do this and you do that, but if you want us to go back on this, you have to go back on that. So journalism is not doing what its job was supposed to do. Supposed to go around and collect information and without hesitation have enough, cover, be covered, have enough insurance in life. A journalist should be have enough insurance in life, assurance from their employers that they will be safe no matter what they report. And the people around need to, guarantee their safety, not cut them down like Assange video was showing, and not cut them down and not try to corral them into a press arena in Kuwait City, and that with spas and bars and restaurants handy to take care of these esteemed journalists who have their nails done between takes, while journalism in the time of Vietnam was get on the chopper with the boys, go to the front line and report from there. Well, the system has adapted this, we call these journalists. They go over there, and under normal circumstances, when there is no war, most American journalists don't go overseas, are never posted overseas. Just they report, and from their the comfort of their own desks, at their own very fancy cities, in their own very fancy apartments, they sit down and they with their own fancy friends, they have a get-together with high heels and short skirts, and this get-together is in front of the camera, and it becomes a very fashionable Fox News and MSNBC, and they're basically peddling more fashion and high heels and high-priced hookers. Than they are peddling news. It's just all sparkly and all tall and all handsome and all beautiful and all gorgeous. I mean, short skirts it's like, what are you selling? Bright colors, very nice bright colors. It's sort of like, wow, what are you selling? Oh, you're selling that the brown people are murderers and rapists, oh shit, such a, colorful newsroom, and they're selling fear. They're selling paranoia. It's sort of like, yes, they may be murderers, they're primitive, they should be left alone. I mean, the answer to Iraq is not we're going to come over there and kick your ass. No, the answer to Iraq was, we like to send you more tourists. How can we, trade more with you? Appeasing a big, there is a big, somebody has got an older system on the ground over there. It's an order. They have created order over there on the ground. Now, if you give them, help them, show them the way, economically, industrially, show them the way, teach them, send them tourists. Most important of all, send them tourists. Their condition will surely become better. Their condition will surely become better. Saddam, maybe, right after Saddam, they would have an election, but it may take 30 years. But you will have 30 years of economic and tourism to a high degree with Iraq. 20, 30 years of economic tourism, economic trade and tourism with Iraq, and after 30 years, 20 years, 30 years, you slowly transition from Saddam to a democratic country. If that's what the locals understand, is how much, if that is how much they have picked up. There is no need for a 20-year-old war. You can do it with a 20-year tourism and trade project. Hey, we need to. The reality is, as things are right now, Uncle Sam's needs to print money because it's the world reserve currency, is what people pay their debt with. It's dollars, and the reality is, the United States has to print lots of it. If dollars is to remain the world reserve currency, the United States has to print a lot of these dollars, lots of it, and its value will not go down because people have to pay their debt with it. So I don't think the value of dollar is going to go down. But the point is this: you can use this dollar now that we recognize that it has to be spread around the world just to keep the systems running. Then you come down to, well, why don't we use this dollar to to incentivize tourism from our place to their place? There is this money that needs to be printed and handed out. Hand that money to the tourists and tell them to go to different parts of the world and spend it on the locals. Believe me, the value of dollar is not going to go down because those locals are going to need those dollars to pay their debt with. So the military, I think, if you need to influence people, you can do a much better with tourism. So military, I think, you can reserve the military in fighting the Martians. If, I would say reserve your resources to fight an unfriendly alien. If, most aliens are friendly, but if it gets down to it and there's an unfriendly alien, at least you have some kind of a chance. But that's you have to reserve the energy for there. It's making weapons and blowing each other up across the planet. It's not like you're hitting the other guy's planet. You're hitting your own planet. It's like Agent Orange that was used in Vietnam. Agent Orange that was used in Vietnam was used to, burn down vegetation, and now it has got into their water, and it's like 50 years now that it's been in their water, and a lot of deformities in children. It creates a lot of deformities in children because it's still in the soil. It still hasn't gone away fully. 30 years later, 40 years later, 50 years later. So the reality is that, can we all be immune from this Agent Orange? No, this Agent Orange eventually finds its way to the ocean, and moves into the food chain of all countries who eat from the ocean. Everybody is fish, right? So the Agent Orange is now spread to a very smaller degree, but it's spread across half the planet. So there is nothing localized. And if you step farther, with regards to, radiation, this is global. Radiation travels globally and sticks around for a long time. So journalists, not models with short skirts, but journalists, not fashion statements, not cultural statements. No, journalists, not high class hookers. Journalists, not executives. Journalists who we understand, but we have to agree that if you're a journalist who speaks the truth, you might not be able to afford to live in a large city. Because people who can afford to live in a large city have a big salary, and if you're in journalism and you have a big salary, that means you're really not a journalist, but you're a speaker for somebody who's willing to pay. Whoever is willing to pay, you speak for them. If you're a rich journalist. So, and in reality is, at the heart of this city, to live at the heart of these cities, you have to be rich to be able to afford a regular life in a lot of these big cities that is the headquarters of these newspapers and news organizations. So, why people don't trust media? Because media didn't go to the front line in Iraq. They stayed in the they're allowed it. They allowed it. Press arena in Kuwait, and they stayed there and they didn't move because they told them it's very dangerous out there. You don't want to be out there. It's very dangerous. You stay here and we tell you what's happening out there. They actually hit a hotel full of journalists in Iraq. Anyway, so those journalists that weren't listening got hit by who? by NATO. Anyway, so here is the thing. The cat is out of the bag, and that these, ever since after Vietnam, after Korea, these news organizations are no longer news organizations. They're opinion formation organization. They're not news, they're opinion formation. And they pay big money. They pay big money to these people to sit around and read from their script, or at least only people of certain thought line, only people of a certain perspective are allowed to be present in front of those cameras. Even if we say they don't approve them line per line, the boss doesn't approve their their nightly presentation line per line, even if it's not that, at least the boss is sure where the guy stands, where his line of thought is, who his loyalties are to. And they pay that guy big sums of money to sit down and give his opinion, but his opinion is the kind of opinion that the owner of the news channel approves of, agrees more or less. And what he agrees is what his advertisers agree with. Who are his advertisers? Other rich people. So all these rich people agree that such a viewpoint should be distributed as much as possible. It should be mass consumed. Such an opinion should be mass consumed. And okay, such opinion should be mass consumed. But then a war comes up, and these rich people, a lot of them, Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, Boeing, a lot of these, advertisers. I've seen advertisement from BAE or BA or BAE. It's a British defense contractor, sort of like equivalent to Lockheed Martin. Has become so big and so profitable, all its branches, and they're doing a great job. It's like, and this advertisement is on Facebook, and you're like, I'm sorry, what are you advertising again? Subjugation of others? What is it you're advertising? Oh, defense of the Malvinas. Or defense of Kuwait. What is it you're advertising? Kuwait just made up of like 3 tribes. There are thousands of tribes over there. Should we give all of them independence? These are the questions that journalists don't ask, and because they want to be invited and they want to keep their cushy jobs in the expensive cities. And you ask why people don't trust the media, because they've seen beautiful, blow-up dolls. There are a bunch of beautiful, gorgeous blow-up dolls, and Miss Americas and Miss Universes, and they're giving the news, and Mr. Homecoming Kings, and reading from a script or from a perspective that the owner of the this bank that pays them has the same view as them. So they keep pushing these views that are a lot of it not really helpful. Let's put it this way. Dividing your own people or dividing the people of the world as us and them is not helpful. You're saying, oh, they're Chinese and we are not Chinese, so we should be, we should lock horns. Why? It's just journalism is not present to ask why. Why should we lock horns? I haven't seen a single journalist say that, why should we lock horns? Are they in Hawaii? Are they in California? Or are they, have they, put down troops in California? Have they put down troops in Mexico? Have they put down troops in Canada? Have they put down troops in... Where have they put down troops that we have to be in the lock horns with them? Oh, they are thinking of putting down troops in, in an island 100 miles off their coast. It's like, many of you who say we should go, many of you who are for, China should not have, any soldiers in Taiwan, and Taiwan should be independent. Would you accept the same independence for Hawaii? It's sort of like, Hawaii should be independent. Well, it was independent until, your predecessors decided that, no, they don't need to be independent. Cuba, right now, they decided they want to be independent. They have been fucking being suffering for 70 years now because they want to be independent, so they're suffering for 70 years. And that's another island which is 100 miles off the coast of Uncle Sam. So you have one island 100 miles off the coast of Uncle Sam, and for 50, 60 years now has been under sanctions and embargoes just because they think they can be independent. But then you think the Chinese should be accommodating of Taiwan, sort of asking Uncle Sam to be accommodating of Cuba. I mean, do unto others what you like others doing unto you. So better way would be for Cuba to be accommodating to the United States, and for Taiwan to be accommodating to China, because that's the center of power, that's the center of gravity in that part of the world. In this part of the world you have this center of gravity, in that part of the world you have another center of gravity, that is China, and then you have another center of gravity, that is Germany, that's another center of gravity, that is Russia, there's another center of gravity, that is Iran. If you recognize this, then many of these wars can be avoided. Neighbors have to work things out based on their size. There's very small neighbors, try to form some kind of a accommodate the larger neighbors, just because it's natural. But nobody in journalism today asks any of these questions. Everyone is like, yeah, should we go to war with China today or tomorrow? That's the only disagreement that I see between these so-called journalists, is that it's like, yeah, we know they're bad. Now let's see, do we have to go kick their ass or just ignore them? I don't know, but it doesn't seem logical. It doesn't seem logical. It doesn't seem normal. It seems the arms dealers, the sword makers, are at the helm, and if they see, even preparation, then the arms dealers and the sword makers, they are probably don't think of the end of the world kind of thing. They hope that another Cold War would be sufficient to sell a lot of arms, to make a lot of arms and sell a lot of arms. So arms dealers are again corporations that look at the next quarter, looking for a next quarter results and hoping for higher numbers. And arms dealers are no exception to this rule, and as all corporations, they have to show profits, and you can't continue selling your shit to the government at 10 times the cost and expecting all of it to rot in the deserts of Arizona. You want to show use for some of it. See, we did this, we took over this, or we took over that, and we toppled this and we toppled that, and we bombed the shit out of that and bombed the shit out of this. This is, arms dealers are benefiting, sword makers are benefiting, and journalists, nope. Apparently patriotism means you don't question the boss or the bosses. Well, North Korea is like that. What's the difference? Apparently journalism means, I need a big fat paycheck. I am popular. I have advertisers, and I'm popular, and I have a big fat check, and I'm pushing an opinion, which may not be to the best interest of the recipients, but it certainly is my best interest because I'm getting paid for this opinion a lot of money. I'm getting paid well for this opinion that I'm pushing. So I must be doing something right. Now, journalism, I'm sorry, but journalism, the idea of looking for the truth is more or less dead. The idea is how worried should we make our audience? Should we make them really worried, or should we make them a little worried, or should we, in order to manipulate their opinions, what kind of information should we give them, in what kind of format, in order to manipulate their line of thought? And who can manipulate their line of thought? Does he have to be white and middle-aged and, a well-known figure? Whatever it takes. We pay him enough, he will sing our tune. And then you wonder why, people don't trust media, because media is filled with journalists who rather take the big bucks, journalists who aren't the A students in their class, journalists who are C students in their class, journalists who are, really, into fashion than journalism, more into sports than journalism, more into, fucking off than journalism, being with the boys, more comfortable in frat houses than in libraries. You have taken those people and you have given them, made them journalists. And after giving them a large check to sustain them in expensive cities, they don't want to let go of the large check, so they become accommodating of whoever tells them to say whatever they need to say. So in short, journalists have become fat, happy, and lazy. And those journalists that are not fat, happy, and lazy are not picked up by these corporations with their fancy, equipment and fancy offices and fancy studios. Those true journalists are not picked up by these fancy news organizations or opinion organizations. So these news organizations bring us a bunch of showmen and showwomen, models, and handsome reporters, but that's about it. They're handsome, they're very nice looking, the women are gorgeous, but what do they talk about? Damn if I can follow. Just nonsense, non-stop nonsense. When they're telling you the news, they're using certain words or certain phrases that would be, pleasing to their overlords, and the guys who are paying them. And why? I would say if you bring some more journalists into the system and don't look for the frat boys, don't hire the homecoming queens and homecoming kings, hire the true journalists, they will come back and hire you. But when you hire the true journalist has some kind of, integrity. They will not lie for you. They will not give you You may not agree with their opinion. But if you want people to go back to your news organization, you have to, go with journalists that sometimes you don't agree with their opinion. Or else people are going to totally stop believing you because they see your bias. Yeah, journalism, haven't recently seen any. A lot of, showmen and showgirls.